Nobody cares about fines.
Oh my God. And wait, here we go. Let's just take that snap.
I don't care. It doesn't matter. I'm going to keep playing the way I play.
Look at this. The locker room's empty. WWE superstars.
And if we keep getting a FedEx every week with a fine notice from the NFL and win football games, I could care less about getting a FedEx. Finnegan to the Tennessean after one of his unnecessary roughness calls. Andre Johnson, former NFL wide receiver for 14 seasons, Pro Bowler, and first ever inductee into the Houston Texans Ring of Honor. An explosive, strong wideout known more during his 12 years in Houston for his benevolent givings for underprivileged children than a violent player who throws haymakers at opponents during the middle of an AFC South game, which would cause $25,000 in fines to be dished out against him. However, in a late November matchup in 2010 between the Houston Texans and the Tennessee Titans, there was one player who got under the skin of Andre Johnson and was showered with not gifts, but punches, and that was Tennessee Titans defensive back Cortland Finnegan, a player who had a reputation for being a little too extra handsy, vocal, and sometimes just plain dirty on the field. So what's going on, guys? Mike here, and before we get started with the content, please consider subscribing, turning on our notifications, and leaving a like to help this channel grow in the YouTube algorithm. Consider following us on Instagram and any of our other platforms in the description down below, and we just recently launched channel memberships if you want to further support the channel. If you have any further ideas as to content that you would like to see us create, such as other on-field fights or rivalries, let us know in the comment section down below. Now that we got all that out of the way, break! Mic check 1 2 1 2. Andre Johnson entered the 2010 NFL season, his 8th with the Houston Texans, as a star receiver who had just inked a contract a few months prior, making him the highest paid wide receiver in NFL history. Already being named AFC Offensive Player of the Week earlier in the season, he was breaking NFL records on November 28, 2010 in a game against the Tennessee Titans when he became the first NFL player to have 60 or more receptions in each of his first 8 seasons. Andre Johnson was a lock for another Pro Bowl appearance, but there were more than just stats that filled the sports pages following the late November game. It was a brawl on the 40-yard line that looked more like a backyard football scuffle between brothers than an NFL game. Conflict that made the analysts sound like they were calling a boxing match as opposed to a NFL football game. Now, his opponent, Cortland Finnegan, was a defensive back for the Tennessee Titans, a Pro Bowler himself, making his first Hawaii appearance the year prior, and also a community-minded guy, being named the Titans Community Man of the Year that season due to his efforts in establishing and fundraising for a charity for children with disabilities and special needs. Also, in that 2010 season, Cortland Finnegan seemed to be extra angry every time he took his position at the line of scrimmage against the NFL's best wideouts. In the Titans' victory over the New York Giants towards the end of September, Cortland Finnegan was fined $5,000 by the NFL for an unnecessary roughness call by violently pulling Giants wide receiver Steve Smith down via his helmet. Finnegan was again slapped with an unnecessary roughness penalty and a $10,000 fine in a game just a month later against the Denver Broncos, where this time Cortland decided to pick on the biggest kid on the other team and threw a punch, and it landed on the Broncos' 6'4", 300+ pound guard Chris Cooper after Cooper had lost his helmet during a play. Thanks to Finnegan's actions, the Titans were now coined as a very dirty team during a season when teams such as the Saints were obliterating opposing players with precious hits, which, by the way, we have a whole dedicated video on the Saints obliterating opposing players, also referred to as Bountygate. We'll leave a link to it in the end screen so you could check it out after this video. You always hear about how tough they are and all that stuff, said Broncos quarterback Kyle Orton. I don't think they're tough. I think they're cheap. And it was one of the cheapest games I've ever seen out of some of those players. The NFL also warned Finnegan that similar behavior would lead to increased discipline. However, Finnegan didn't get the memo, or he did and simply chose to ignore it, as the next month Finnegan got into a major fist-swinging extravaganza against perhaps the top NFL wide receiver at the time. It was week 12 of the 2010 NFL season, and the Houston Texans were hosting the Tennessee Titans during the inaugural NFL's Play 60 game, a game that encouraged kids to get their exercise and honored those who played Pee-wee and participated in punt, pass, and kick. You may be familiar with this famous Cam Newton commercial.
It's a player day, right?
And I'll grow up to be big and strong like you.
Absolutely.
And play in the NFL.
Yes, sir.
And be drafted number 1.
Maybe.
Become the starting quarterback of the Panthers.
Okay.
You can be my backup.
Excuse me?
And make Panthers fans forget about you. And become your mom's favorite player.
Whoa.
I'm just loosening my arm.
The football field would soon look more like a 6th grade boys game of backyard brawl football versus an NFL game. The strategy for the Texans was to get the ball to receiver Andre Johnson as frequently as possible. He was, after all, once again putting up Hall of Fame-worthy numbers. That season, Andre Johnson recorded 86 receptions for 1,216 yards, 93.5 yards per game, and had a catch percentage of 62.3%. He also recorded 8 touchdowns, and he was targeted only 138 times. During the first play of the game, there was a 6-yard pickup with Andre Johnson receiving a pass down the middle, making that the 76th straight game for him with a reception. Then in just the next play, Andre Johnson would catch another pass and was thrown down just short of the first down. With just 9 minutes remaining in the first quarter, Johnson already had 4 catches against Cortland Finnegan, including a 21-yard gain. With just under 5 minutes remaining in the first quarter, Johnson lined up as a tight end and left Finnegan in the dust, running away from him to the back of the end zone, where he reached out and caught the pigskin for the Texans' first score of the day. In the second half, Johnson was the receiver for a lot of receptions from the Texans quarterback Matt Schaub, while oftentimes Finnegan looked frustrated that he just could not make it to him in time. On a 2nd and 8 play in the fourth quarter, near the scrum of where a run was taking place, Johnson and Cortland, with hands up high, began shoving each other, with Andre Johnson knocking Finnegan's helmet off and then shoving him a yard towards the center of the field. Then fireworks really began, with just under the 8-minute mark in the fourth quarter, following a handoff to Titans Ward on a 3rd and 8. The CBS broadcast then pans over to Andre Johnson sans helmet, wailing on Cortland Finnegan's head, and a referee pulls Johnson off of Finnegan. Finnegan backs away, jabbering away while feverishly clapping his hands, amped up as Texans center Chris Myers holds Finnegan by the right shoulder pad, pushing him further away from Johnson. Titans head coach Jeff Fisher and his fine-looking mullet comes out into the field, waving his hands in a weak attempt for his team to settle down. Both teams begin to convene for a few moments in a brawl while the whistles continue to blow. Finnegan is now next to Jeff Fisher, removing his shoe with a welt visible on his temple. Andre Johnson is promptly ejected from the game and is escorted via coaches and police officers to his home locker room, while Texans fans, many of them wearing Johnson's number 80 jersey, cheer, scream, and wave in delight. The referees reconvene and announce personal foul penalties in the form of unnecessary roughness against both teams, and went on to eject both Andre Johnson and Cortland Finnegan from the game. In the replay, the full fight scene is unveiled. The cameras show Finnegan just after the snap putting both hands on Johnson's face mask, pushing his head backwards before he punches Johnson in the head, while Johnson was still wearing his helmet at the time. Probably not the smartest move on Cortland Finnegan's part. I see this happen a lot in the NFL, and for some reason I don't get why players punch helmets, but here we are. The 228-pound Johnson, a head taller than the 190-pound Finnegan, swung around for a bit, with Finnegan finally removing Andre Johnson's helmet. Johnson then is able to land a couple of punches, including a square uppercut. After the team brawl, and while waiting for the referee's announcement, Cortland Finnegan puts his helmet back on, thinking he will be cleared to return to the game, and gives a couple of winks to the Tennessee Titans sideline. After ejection, Cortland Finnegan parades down the sideline back to the visiting locker room, waving to Texans fans and grinning as he leaves the field of play. The Texans end up victorious, winning the game 20-0, but missed the playoffs that season. As for Finnegan and Johnson, they were both fined $25,000, but were not suspended by the league. Both players were apologetic after the incident, and the brawl didn't lead to a big-time rivalry of any sorts. Did I want it to escalate into that? Absolutely not, Finnegan said the Monday following the incident on a Nashville radio show. The only thing that upsets me, if you reverse that and it's me, I'm not at the radio show. I'm sulking because I got a game suspension, but you twist it and it's because of me. It's just a buildup of things over plays, Andre Johnson said of the incident. I just lost my cool. At a point, he snapped and started throwing blows, Finnegan said of Johnson. At the end of the day, I guess he got his money's worth. Andre Johnson, following the incident, gave a formal apology by stating, "I would like to apologize to the organization, our owner, and my teammates. What happened out there today was not me. I just lost my cool, and I wish that I could take back what happened, but I can't. It's over and done with now." Andre Johnson would retire after his 14-year career. He signed an honorary 1-year contract so he could officially retire as a member of the team. His name has been enshrined as part of the Texans Ring of Honor, and he is a sure lock for the Pro Football Hall of Fame in the near future. Cortland Finnegan also retired in 2016 after nearly 10 years as a journeyman in the NFL, but he is probably most famous for his fight against Andre Johnson on that late November day. Thanks for watching the video. If you made it to the end of the video, you may want to consider subscribing and leaving a like to help the channel grow, because chances are I have other content that you would enjoy. If you have any other suggestions as to content that you would like us to create, go to the comment section down below and suggest it. We usually check the top comments for future video ideas. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.